Well, it's about bloody time you got around to part 2.
Could you just,
Oh, right. Do the thing.
the thing?
Escape to DOS.
Yeah, anyway, so remember this stuff? A friend of the channel sent this over, and let's get right into it. I'm going to use this system. It's a 386 that I fixed on this very channel. And with that, I'm going to use the DIY RAM that I made back a year ago. And what a hot topic that is right now because of the DDR5 issue. I got 2,000 extra views on a year-old video, my DIY RAM modules. And the thumbnail photo, that's clearly not DDR5. So I'm hoping that they came here out of curiosity. And for the people that have subscribed and watched the video so many times, thank you so much because you're about to put me over 10,000 views on this video. And I don't do this for profit. I do this because, hey, I'm stuck on the beige planet. I got to do something with my time. So into the computer goes the RAM and the cache and the controller card and the video card and, yes, the longest sound card on the planet, the beige planet. This is the Boca Research SE1440, and it will not fit in a small case. Well, hey, that's good. That was the first time I tried firing it up, and it made that pop in the speakers, so that means the amplifier's working. And this card uses the MAD16 Pro chip, the Opti 82C929A. And it doesn't work with Unisound, so I had to go searching for the drivers because after multiple failed attempts trying to get it to work, no, it just would not. And I had a couple of things run me down a rabbit hole of stupidity. First off, my MAD16 Pro driver disk, well, it had bad sectors, and that's as far as it would go was loading program, which led me to checking the legs on the Opti chip. That's what Adrian Black dealt with, and after he did a reflow in the solder, suddenly the card came to life. But I couldn't find anything wrong with them, but regardless, I did a reflow anyway. But that sent me down the rabbit hole of stupidity even further because suddenly I got this far with the installation. And it had nothing to do with the Opti chip. It had everything to do with a bad disk. Oh, now the mouse just died. Oh. Well, that's as far as I've got. So I was thinking that, well, maybe that version of the driver doesn't work. I need to get the actual SE1440 driver. And no, sorry. They have documentation, explains all the jumpers, that's useful. But not the driver, the thing that I need. So the next card over that looks pretty much the same, it's got a few differences to it. But it had 5 drivers listed, so I found the DOS driver and I thought, let's give that a shot. But it is newer, it doesn't have any jumpers like the 1440, but these Opti drivers seem kind of generic, so, maybe it'll work. And this one is blue, the other one was red, and it's the 2.5 version. I have had issues with the other version of it, where the mouse cursor will leave traces on the screen, and, it still seems to load correctly, but it can act a bit weird. At this point, I haven't heard any sounds out of this card yet. Let's see if there's any sound. Success. Sort of. Yeah, and then... sounds just like it's supposed to. But this... it just hangs. Seems to have the hanging note bug. It seems to be stuck. So then I tried it in Windows 3.1 with MicroLogic, as I typically do. Ooh. Wait a minute. Hold on. So it wasn't playing that right, so I, of course, went to Monkey Island. And this appears to be working perfectly. I decided to give it some more testing, so I used Sequencer Plus. Everything seems to be working. So with that driver, the channels were a little squirrely in Windows 3.1, but as far as everything else, it seems to be working correctly. So let's set that aside for now and have a look at the next thing. Now, I was told this card only shows the voltage lights and it gives 4 dashes, and that's all it'll do. Now, we're unfortunately not sure exactly what caused this failure. It was inserted into an untested board, and there may have been a problem with the voltages on that board. Or it was put in backwards, but probably not. Still, I think I found something. So the way I figured out that there is probably a problem with this chip is the reset would not come on and go off. It wouldn't do anything. So what I did was I traced the reset, that resistor, the second resistor there, when it connects to that side of the LED. If you touch that side of the resistor, and I searched through everything and I discovered there is a direct connection to pin 14 on that gal chip. So because I have the 2 cards, I have one that has a good gal chip, I decided to compare the 2 of them. So I went through each leg from pin 14 and checked the resistance to see if that would give me any indication that there was something different. And most of the legs had very high resistance, 14, 15, 16 mega ohms. Comparing it to my good card, the difference is immediately obvious. So based on that, I decided that, well, there's obviously something wrong with the gal chip on the bad card. And while I was trying to figure this out, I got this very helpful message from Firebird TV saying that one of their chips blew up as a result of flipping the card. So what I'm assuming is the output from this chip has been damaged, so that signal is not flowing to the LED. So that's why I'm going to pull this chip off and see what it does. So this particular gal chip is pretty cheap to get, but the one right beside it is the C version of it, and I could buy a whole card for the price of that single chip. And coincidentally, I happen to have, well, it's the same chip, but it's in a different package. And that was the gal chip that I used to create the upgrade for the Sound Blaster 2.0. Now, unfortunately, my programmer didn't come with this adapter. So I had to get creative, and to test the chip on my programmer, I went with this approach. And because after I did my multimeter test on it, I'm assuming this thing has failed anyway, so it's not like I can really do any more damage to this chip. But let's just verify it with the programmer. And of course, the first couple of times I had to move it around to get it to work correctly. Well, it told me that the pins were detected and something is wrong with this chip. So this is why I had to order some parts. So in the meantime, let's have a look at that XT IDE, the factory assembled one. And we'll find out if we can get that to work. Okay, so this is the first time I'm plugging it in. That's in the 386. I fire it up and it just does nothing. Well, it could be that the card has a failure or that chip needs to be programmed, is what I'm assuming. And with the M27C256B, yeah, you get that every single time. It works with the AM chips, but not with the M. So I'm forced to uncheck the check ID. And then everything works just like it's supposed to. And then I can read the chip, and it tells me that it is completely blank. Confirming, as I expected, that the Chinese PCB producer does not program the chip. So when you get your PCBs, you're going to have to pull the chips out and choose one of these bin files. Now, there's other ways to do it, but this was the fastest for me, and thanks to another maker for providing these. Next, I programmed the chip, and then I put the chip back into the XT IDE board. And when I tried to put that chip back in, the legs were so wide, it must be a machine that is putting those chips in. Because I had to put a substantial bend in those legs on my laptop there just to be able to slide that chip in. But back into the 386 it goes. And to this point, I'd only ever put the XT IDE into my 486, the Fortiva 5000. So, hey, I'd never even tried this with a 386 before. Here we go. And of course, there it is, XT IDE. And for that one, I used another maker's bin, the 386 2-drive version. And I'm just verifying that everything is working like it's supposed to. Yeah, absolutely. Complete success. So you know how when you first try something and it works just fine, and then you use it for a bit, and then it sort of intermittently starts doing unexpected things? Well, that's kind of what happened with the longest card on the planet. So I pulled out my 486 because I wanted to try the Windows 95 drivers. The PC Chips board has 2 VLB slots, but I'm stuck using that PCI video card. And long cards will only fit in the VLB slots because the way the CPU sticks up, you got to have a really short ISA card. Alright, so it's been a while since I've fired up this board, and let's just see if it works. Oh, good. Hooray, it does work. After a lot of searching and searching online, as far as I know, they never released an actual Windows 98 driver for this sound card. So what I did was I used the stock Windows 98 drivers and just gave that a go and see what it did. Now, I had the sound cranked right up because I wanted to really hear what this card could do. And that rattled a mouse off the top of my speaker. A USB mouse, that is. And what I experienced was that you just cannot get this card to work with the Sound Blaster or compatible. Nope, didn't matter what I did. I tried everything. I tried the Sound Blaster Pro compatible, but no, it always sent me back to this, and that just comes up as not working. It did default to interrupt 7. I changed it to 5, but no, that didn't make any difference either. Which means you can't use the FM synthesis in Windows 98. Now, if you go to the Boca Research website, it mentions the FTP site, and that doesn't work anymore. But out of the blue, of course, at the VCFF, somebody decided to post another link that actually works. And it takes you to these file areas. For instance, driver software, and then that file area 27 is what I was looking for, which takes me to the se1440.zip file. And that works with DOS, Windows 3.1, and Windows 95. Now, when you try to install it in Windows 98, it sort of works. Now, it won't install the Sound Blaster or compatible driver correctly, but it does install some Opal 3 driver, and as a result, but I get the impression that it's sort of hanging notes. It's acting a little peculiar, but you know, it kind of works. It's time for Windows 95. Yeah. And through the magic of editing, it makes it look like it only takes seconds to load up, when it actually took quite a while. But anyway, it has correctly loaded the SE1440 installation utility. And I've got my speakers cranked up pretty loud. Not noticing anything really yet as far as odd sounds coming out of the sound card. Now with this driver, you have to do it manually. It doesn't load it in automatically. You have to go through the whole hardware search and all that. But anyway, what I noticed was the Windows 95 version of the driver, it seems to load the volume in quite a bit louder than Windows 98. And when you do that, well, the background noise gets raised as well, and I notice that rumbling sound, and it's just sort of intermittent. It comes and goes. Sometimes I'm thinking, oh, it's gone, and then, no, it returns. Now, as far as the instruments playing correctly, with Windows 95, it sounds good, but as soon as you touch the volume on it, it makes that loud click, which is unusual. I've never experienced that before. And, yeah, that rumbling and scratching sound, that's still there. I can't seem to get rid of it. I pulled the card out of the 486 and I put it back into the 386, and it's making that sound again. Plus, there is something microphonic about this card. And especially when I tap on that area there, I can hear it coming through the speaker. So I need to put the card on its side. A little while back, I made the Tony 359 90-degree card there. And for this application, it's exactly what you need. That way you can have a good look at the card. What I discovered was this one spot in particular was producing the most noise through the speaker. Now, it's not exactly clear because my phone is what's picking up the sound. But as I'm going around there, suddenly, I hear a much louder signal coming through the speaker right there. So I spent all kinds of time trying to figure out what was making the most noise. Apparently, these capacitors can go microphonic. And that's what I was thinking was the problem. And it was either one of these two or possibly that resistor. Well, this is not easy to figure out. I can still hear it right in this area, and I've removed.
What's up, Doc?
For all I know, it could be that chip right there. Before I give up on this, I'm going to replace these two capacitors. Well, I changed the capacitors, and I'm assuming this is going to make no difference. Yep, there we go. Yeah. These capacitors, that's a 10 microfarad. Oh, here goes. Nope. Well, this is the last of the three. Yeah, I can hear it now already. The only thing I can think is possibly this chip has failed. And I'm thinking, well, I gotta order away and blah, 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 and how much is that gonna be? And then I looked around the card and then I noticed, oh, what do you know? There's two more of the exact same chip. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Pull that chip, put it there, and see if it makes any difference. Oh no. So I'm just going to run the 8-bit sound test. Yeah, it still works. So I tried replacing all those three capacitors. I tried those two and that one. I made sure that all of the legs were all properly soldered down on both of the chips, and nothing. So like, it does work. The card does work. I can demonstrate. It works, but it does have sort of a peculiar bit of a buzz to it. And the rumbling sound is kind of lost when the music is going. So after desoldering, over a dozen parts and getting absolutely no difference, I decided to probe that crystal chip. That is the CS4231A. And there are two analog output pins on that chip. And if you listen to those two pins, you can hear the rumbling right there at the chip before it gets to any of the other components. But we'll return to that. Now, after I had removed the bad gal chip from the bad post-analyzer card, I decided to stuff it back into my 386 machine and see if anything had changed. And look at this. It's actually sort of doing something. The reset still doesn't work. I'll show you that. Yeah, reset never comes on. But at least it goes to FF now, so I think I might proceed with this. Okay, so this is the test. I have taken the good chip, I put it in this post analyzer, And I made sure there was no shorts, and this could be a big waste of time, and I may just ruin a card, but, that's what you gotta do for science. So here we go. This is the first test. I haven't done this yet. Here we go. First reaction. Look at that! Ha ha ha! Yeah. Well, that works. What do you know? Oh, what about the reset? I didn't even notice the reset. Yeah, the reset works too. Well, it appears that all that was damaged on this card was the GAL 16 V8. So the big question is, can I extract the information from that good chip and then put it on a new blank chip? It's not really bad anymore. So the question now is it worth fixing the other card, my original card? So to get the adapter that I'll need to do this, there's $2.17. A fifth of $3.79 is 76 cents. Add that to $2.17 and you get $2.93. Whereas I could get the whole card for, $7.72. So what are we going to do? No part 3. Right at the beginning, I explained I did wait for these parts to arrive. So let's take a little intermission from all that chaos. Yes, my packages arrived all the way from China and it only took 12 days. The first thing I unwrap is the PLCC20 adapter. That is the chip adapter for my programmer. And for the particular kit that I bought, that wasn't included, so that's why I had to get that. Next was something I got just to get that $10 free shipping. This is also something that I've needed for a while, but I've been holding off, and they were a couple of bucks, so whatever. They're kind of cheap, kind of really thin plastic, but I don't think it'll make that much of a difference. The next item was something I had to get, once again, to get it up to $10. It was only a couple of dollars, so it's a 5-volt Bluetooth receiver. I'm going to put that into my Pioneer receiver. And most importantly were the GAL chips that I ordered. And I just chose the exact same type that was on the bad card, and that is the GAL 16 V8D and then 15 LJ. I don't know if there's a difference between the original one, which was a 5 LJ, and the 15 LJ, but if you do, let me know. So I grabbed these two items because I still have that Series 2 in the future that I'm working on, where I'm going to reassemble all those machines that I disassembled. And I specifically ordered these ones because they use the micro SD cards, not the full SD. And I have had nothing but problems with these stupid micro SD adapters. They barely make contact, I have to pull them in and out again, and they're tiny fiddly things to deal with. So I'm really hoping that eliminating this stupid adapter will make this a flawless experience. I got a deal on these micro SDs a while ago, and I've got too many of the things, and they're all 512 megabytes, so they work perfectly with these old machines. And it worked out to be a really good deal for this particular version of it with the micro SD, so I thought it was worth giving it a shot. And so far, they seem to fit just right. So let's get back to it. The first thing I have to do is I have to extract this chip and read the information into my programmer and then hopefully transfer that information onto the brand new chips. And I'm going to clean up the pads and make sure that area is ready for a new chip. Slip the chip into the adapter. And something I didn't know about the JED file, that's the file that you need to load onto the chip. Well, sometimes they use a lock bit, which prevents you from reading the information that's on the chip. And this I just discovered with the Sound Blaster 2.0. I was trying to burn one of those GAL chips. Yeah, and what I usually do is just burn it. It says successful, and I stick it in the Sound Blaster 2.0, and that's good enough for me. And because I was sending this off to the friend of the channel, I decided, well, maybe I should verify the chip just to make sure. And that's when I realized that you cannot verify the chip and you can't read the chip unless you program it without the lock bit. So as I'm struggling to get this chip to read correctly, this finally happened. It finally, all the pins were detected correctly, and yes, indeed, I was able to read the information that was on that chip. Because I looked online to see if anyone else had posted the JED file for this particular chip, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I'm thinking I'll probably upload this to the retro web. But if this hadn't worked, I would have had to just solder it back onto one of the boards and accept that one of them will never work properly. But that wasn't the case, and I successfully saved that file. So into the adapter goes the first fresh chip, which I'm assuming is blank. It's a bit of a trick to get the best contact in that little adapter. And of course, the first time I tried to program the chip, it gave me a fail. So I had to do it a second time. And that was successful. And while I was still there, I decided just to burn another one, just in case I decided to use 2 fresh chips. I then solder it right onto the bad board, we're going to call it for now. And everything was going fine, and then I made slight mistake right there. Yeah, I didn't quite get it all the way, and I went back even a second time. But that didn't do it. I should have gone back with the multimeter and checked all these, but I didn't. I was kind of more excited to see if this would actually work. All right, this is the moment of truth. I have what is formerly called the bad card. I have installed the GAL chip that I got from AliExpress, and I programmed, and now I'm going to see if transferring the data from the good GAL into the blank GAL pays dividends. So here we go. Time to test it. And go. Oh no, it doesn't work. But we already know what the problem is. I went back and I touched up that one solder joint. And let's see if it works now. Yes! And that was a very simple problem to solve, thankfully. Okay, this time I have plugged in my CF card. Let's see if it goes all the way through. 5150. And yep. Well, you know what that means. I gotta remove the bad sticker. That is no longer bad. Oh man. Okay. This is painter's tape. It should have come off easy. There we go. And functional. But now, my original card, the one that I stole the chip from, I've got to fix that. So it's time to put the chip, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the program chip, and I'll save the original GAL chip. And of course, this time I made sure that I got those solder joints nice and thick, so there's no question to whether or not they are actually connected. But you got to be careful with these kind of chips, because as I discover later, when I try to touch up the other GAL chip, they wick underneath and they can make bridges and you can destroy everything. But we'll get to that. That's the original GAL chip. And this is my programmed GAL that I got from AliExpress. So let's see if I got the soldering correct this time. And blast off. Yes. Awesome. Nice to see. Well, that I think that kind of wraps it up, because I have complete functionality here. But the question is, does it work with PCI? Let's find out. All right, so this is the card that I repaired, what was formerly the bad card, and I put a little dot on there so I'll know, because there is no difference between the two cards. You cannot tell at all. So this is the PCI. We're going to try PCI this time, and fingers crossed this works. Here we go. This computer takes just a little long at startup, but there we are. Yeah, 5150. Get into, yep, and hits MS-DOS, and we get to 0002. And And on screen, we're all good. Okay, so let's try my original card. We can remember that little spider that I created. Okay, stick this one in. This is my original card, also with a programmed gal chip. And here we go. You know, it starts off okay, but it starts to get really jittery and crazy the further it gets into it. Right there, for instance. Yeah. Which made me think that, maybe I've done something. Kind of wild, though. Like maybe I have to resolder in the original chip. MS-DOS comes up, and that's different. I wonder why that is. Is it anything to do with the way it's there? No? Yeah, that's curious. We'll try that again. And because I was trying to get this video completed, it led me to one of the stupidest choices I've made in a while. But before I did that, I attempted dueling cards. Okay. And the results are a little bit different. And you can see that wildness of... Yeah, my original card is a bit crazy. At this moment I was thinking, why didn't I record this before I made any changes to the original card? So then I started searching through my previous videos to see if I had ever captured that sequence, and also through YouTube to see if anyone else has recorded this. Well, that's unusual. I don't know what to think about that. I turned the board around and I had a look at the ISA performance of these two cards side by side. And they're pretty consistent. And the only difference is when it gets to 0060 or 61. They seem to be pretty similar. Oh, slight bit of a difference, 61 and 60. So I tried again, and this time it came up as 60 and 61. And then I made my stupid mistake. My original card, which is this one without the dot on it, I touched up the solder joints on the other gal chip, and it started to smoke. I kind of panicked. I pulled it out there. I didn't film it, and I used the solder wick, and I managed to get the bridge out from underneath. And what a fantastic relief that was to see, and no smoke coming off of the gal chip. Seems to be similar, more similar, but there's still a slight difference when it gets to the 61. And yeah, it says 61 on this card and 60 on that card. And when it gets to MS-DOS, it hits 002 now. I'm going to have to call this a success because it's definitely functioning correctly and the cards are reading the same numbers. So let's call this a success. And as a result, I can throw this into the bad chip pile. And after I got those other results, I tried again. Back card 61. And this time both cards came up 60. And I looked online and I saw some different results there too. And then I dug through all my files and I found this video clip of the card, the original card in the PCI slot, and it's just as jittery back then when it was brand new. So in conclusion, I think that I have two fully working cards. I'll probably use the new one if I'm going to use it in the PCI slot, just because it's easier to read, that one. And the old one, I'll just keep using that with the ISA slots, which is primarily what I use these things for anyway. But what I learned is that the gal chip that they put on these cards is readable, and you can extract the information and make your own. And now I have another adapter that I can throw into my programmer box. So there it is. The Escape to DOS Greatest Hits CD. Yeah, it's pretty cheesy. It's like something that would have been made back in the early 2000s. And there's my disk. And now, as I was recording this, it was around the holidays. And you can call it a holiday miracle or whatever you choose. But for some reason, this card stopped making that terrible grumbling, rumbling noise that it was making before. Now, I don't know if someone snuck down my chimney with their soldering iron and solved my electronics problem, whatever. I'm going with it. Allow me to demonstrate. I ran it through a bunch of different tests. That all works fine. Yeah, I can't explain it. I don't know what caused this thing to suddenly stop making that noise, whether the existing capacitors on that board have reformed just because I started using the thing again. I don't know if it was because of all the soldering I did. I have no idea. Whatever caused it, doesn't matter. I'm going to keep an eye on this thing. It's an enormous card. It's definitely a showpiece. Maybe if that driver disc hadn't have failed to begin with, I wouldn't have gone through such a crazy path with this thing. But whatever. It all worked out. I gave that disc as a gift. I learned a few things about programming chips and what you can get away with. And I also learned that, it's probably best always to check with a multimeter before you plug something in, regardless of how anxious you are to see if the thing is going to work. Another big thank you to the friend of the channel that sent all this stuff along. Now I have an extra post-analyzer card. Maybe it even works better than my original one. I've got a whole bunch of discs to use now. I've got an extra XT IDE, and I have this enormous card, the Boca Research Sound Expression 1440. And, hey, I've got some batteries too to put in those battery holders. Not available in record stores. Currently only available on YouTube. Wishing you all the best in this new year that we've already gotten into. And oh, there's just one more thing. As I was making this video, DIY RAM modules hit 10,000 views. What an awesome way to start the new year.